just strictly a conversation. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Lori Power and I'm a group benefit consultant. Part of my role in dealing with my clients is to be consistent, and that consistency involves sourcing and gaining information that's important to them. Harry and I met on a CALU board that we both sit on, and he started to talk a little bit about digital privacy, how it applies to benefit plans. And I immediately reached out and I said, I need to have a deeper conversation about this. I saw things that were coming across my desk that were concerning, and it was wonderful to see the action that Harry had taken. Harry, can we start a little bit by telling me about you and your practice and how you do business?
It's always the greatest question for any business owner. Tell me how you got here. Tell me what the ground in between was like. Tell me, because I might want to take a few vicarious slices of that and apply it to my own situation. And it's always the best opening question with a client once you've been invited in. Tell me how you got here. What was your business? And if they say nothing, then you're probably out of there in about 10 minutes. But if they start saying something, you'll probably see the clock go by for 20 minutes, and they'll feel good about telling their story. Everyone has a story. It's a whole other article for me one day that I'll write and I just ask that question: what's your story? And if I don't get the answers, or we don't get going, I keep probing, because we're humans. When we get put on the spot, we don't want to actually say what's on our minds. We just want to skirt the issue, or as an example,
I missed that memo, Harry. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, like in yesterday's call, I used that example that when you're asking a business owner, why do you want benefits? You should be asking that question at some point. What's the deal here? What, I'm here to talk to you about benefits. Tell me what benefits mean to you. And if they go down the one of two rabbit holes, one that says retention and the other one says attraction, that's not good enough. Keep going until you get some real answers, like, I care about my team. I just feel it's necessary for the financial catastrophes that could happen. I want to make sure that my people and their families are taken care of, not just by paying them, but also taking care of their health. And that's the kind of motherhood you want to hear. Anyway, you asked me a question, how we started so many years ago. I'm 36 years in this business. If you would have asked me coming out of university if this was going to be my life's passion or challenge, I would have said something like, no, I think I'm probably going to be an accountant. My mother would like me to be an accountant. She was a banker, and there were other things along the way that came into play, and landed in this business in the mid 80s. And I have to say, it wasn't by design. Took a very close look at the business, saw the corporate market, and really wanted to be in that market, and learned that back in the day, there wasn't a lot of competition. There wasn't a lot of people doing this stuff. And it was all about, if you could get people's dental claims paid after they were refused, you were a rock star, and you probably got a referral and you got more business. All of that is past. The group market for me is the corporate market on both sides of the equation. And we started in the 80s, and we landed a mammoth case. And I remember somebody saying to me at the time, they said, wow, you just got a coast to coast 300 life case. What a great opportunity to learn. And I wasn't quite sure how to take that, because I was like, yeah, well, I'm just going to do the work. But, there was so much we didn't know. Oh, my goodness. And that was 1988 and 89. So in the first couple of years in the business, we had landed 2 very large cases, and then off and running we were going. And so the practice has 15 people in. Talia Lane is on the board here. She works in the practice. She's our communication marketing specialist, and she's going to make sure that I don't say anything too off color. And she has been with the firm for 17 years, and the truth be known, she is also my daughter.
This isn't supposed to be all PNC. We thrive a little bit on the off color.
Yeah. I have a background in journalism, so I was actually an editor for a long time before I joined the company. So I like to keep him in line, because sometimes his sense of humor is not always well received.
What's really upsetting is he started you working at 10 years old in the company. That's the sad.
I wish. I'm gonna be 43 in June, if that shows how old he is. So
well, a future happy birthday for sure.
Thank you.
You're basically his press secretary then.
Essentially, yes, and controller, payroll, everything. I joined as communications, and if you had asked me in high school, would I ever go work for my dad, I would have said, "Are you nuts?" I did the journalism thing for a while. I was in a marketing role at another company, and then they were looking for me, and I originally said no, because like, who wants to go work with their dad? And then I just, and also my mom works here too. And at the time, my grandmother. So yeah, and here I am 17 years later. Who wants to go work for your dad?
But it just goes to show the breadth of the industry that we're in when you're dealing with corporations and benefits. And that's a wonderful segue into how you write the articles. And so again, if you hadn't had an opportunity to get the article, it's in Benefits and Pension Monitor, and it's called Healthcare in the Digital Age. And even though it has a benefit bend, you go into a lot of detail, Harry, that it doesn't matter what business you're in, you actually address a lot of these issues when it comes to privacy in the digital age. So can you take me through how you first got interested in writing about this?
Yeah, it was a natural. One of the things in the benefits industry that we focus on a ton in our practice is all of the paper that comes through, and how that paper or that communication or narrative or agenda from the supplier community finds its way into the hands of the employer and is either disseminated, stopped, it goes through very little filter, gets down to the end user plan member, and may not always be aligned. You're going to hear me use the word alignment, and I'm using it in the context of what is the messaging that your client, your group client, wants to see going out to their employee base, and everything from timing to how does that resonate, and then we circle back and we get into the dark area of things going to clients without the employer who's paying the bill without their knowledge. And then employees are coming to the employer or to the HR director and saying, geez, I got this thing, and they've never seen it, weren't aware. They get on the phone to us and say, by the way, Harry, did you know that so-and-so on the floor got this? And I'm really concerned about the messaging here. I'm a little bit blindsided, and what they're not saying is, and where the hell were you on this? I thought you're supposed to be looking after all of this stuff. So, we draw a parallel from the days when we first heard of the internet and all the good that comes with it, and now there's still a lot of good, but there's also some stuff that gets taken for granted. And in the messaging, the fact that we've gone through COVID, all of the opportunities for some of that higher touch stuff is really back in the hands of social media. And the expression I have, I don't want to repeat, is it's just a mess. Everybody is vying for eyeballs, and they're vying for market share. and they're prepared to bend the rules to their own advantage. And this isn't about we, they, this is about everybody just working closer together. And it's something Dave Patriarch, some of you may know, he and I shared a very heated conversation over this about what's going on in the marketplace with respect to the boilerplating that's getting in front of our clients is taking place in these things called agile teams. Now, if you haven't heard of an agile team is somebody walks into your office and says, I want to do this. I want to get a marketing campaign out. I want to touch people in this area. And the response has to be within 48 or 72 hours. Everything is out, it's thought of, and so on. And a lot of the stuff gets missed. There's a piece in the article that I'll share with you for the call here, where in the virtual healthcare area in, I guess it was late fall. And the call came to us from a client, said, oh, so-and-so's having a problem. By the way, did you know that XYZ insurer is offering this benefit? And I don't want to, I didn't touch it in the article, so I won't touch it on the thing. And it seems right, but like, how come this got by us? We didn't know. Did you guys know? We didn't know. We were shocked. And so we did a little bit of research, and we learned that the Ontario government was offering this benefit for free, and that the insurer was offering it as a trial, but soon they would be charging for it. We spoke to the people at the insurance company, and our local office in Toronto had no clue. They didn't know it had gone out. They didn't know that it was going to be free, provided by the provincial government. So little things like that, great ideas, but execution through whatever means falls flat in its face. And then the impact of the whole process you start to question, what's the integrity. As it is, a great program, and it's alive and well even today and supported at the government level. So great stuff. Who watches whether execution is going to be aligned at the plan sponsor level, the employer level, as that messaging gets down, or does anybody care? And so we got interested in that so many years ago, and with many of the suppliers, we would say, look, everything comes through our office. We'll help you, you help us. You don't mind. I know it's going to slow the process up, but there's probably a good chance that nobody's going to have egg on their face, and there'll be a good flow of information. If it's a really good idea, don't you want us in your corner banging the drum? Or do you want us to call you and say, by the way, we didn't know this was going on. Who made that decision, and why are you talking to our clients? Yesterday's call, I saw that little chart about, and this gets into a very organic discussion of who owns the client. I would say who owns the narrative is more importantly. First of all, the person that pays the bills first, and then the person that hires them might have a say, and the supplier might be third on that list. But if you invite different people to that conversation goes a little bit sideways or a little bit differently. So in starting in the whole interest world of digital and messaging, and how that is all being rolled out, I think there was a quote in some, I don't know if I put it in this article, but when I was in university, one of my heroes was Marshall McLuhan. Everybody thought he was nuts in the 70s and the 80s. He is termed one of the first communication theorists of the 20th century, I guess you could say. And he coined phrases that we've all heard, like the medium is the message and whatnot. But he also has some very profound phrases that when the medium that we choose overtakes the messaging, and in some of the cases where messaging or the narrative from the suppliers bypasses the advocacy, that's when my tail feathers go up. And all right, stuff like this. And surprisingly enough, only one from the industry called and said, by the way, you know, we don't agree with everything that you said, but you do have a good point here that we need to maybe look at the way we send all of this this material out.
I think we need to get the article read more, and then you would get more responses. But I heard, you bring to mind a couple of things. Last week, I heard the term Imp Obesity. Anybody hear that before? So
No.
yeah, Chris, you heard it then because you would have been on the session last week. And that struck me when we're talking about this digital privacy, on how easy things are missed because they're embedded within these contracts. Doesn't matter what we're doing. When you and I first talked, Harry, we talked about how quickly we hit I agree, or this site does this and I agree because I want to get on that site and see it. And that Imp Obesity is the ability, I'm going to paraphrase Chris, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's so much information coming in. Can we disseminate what is vital to us versus what isn't? And I think here you made a really good point there to say that it is important, if we're working in the best interest of our client, to keep an eye on that information. You had a great example yesterday of a phrase that was embedded in an amendment that you caught, and the carrier, who had a legal team, said, oh, sorry, we didn't realize that one. I mean, take us through that example.
This was just Monday. So we have a fairly large piece of business that is going live this week. It's coast to coast. It's in all the provinces. And it's a financial services company, fairly large and established. And so we were reading the I chose to work from home on Monday, which is rare for me because I'm in the office even today. And I'm just one of those people, I like to be in the office. I have an office at home, but it's not the same. So I chose to work from home on Monday and read those contracts, which took me about 3 hours to read. There were 4 of them. And one of the phrases in the contract, it was in the deferred profit sharing text, said the contributions to the plan are owned by the company, meaning the insurance company that was hosting the plan, the funds. And we said, no, the contributions to the plan are owned by the members. Imagine somebody reading that maybe legals, after we put our blessing on it, legals reads that, I don't catch it, legals comes back and said, what are we paying these guys for? They said they read it. So read it with a fine tooth comb. It was nauseating. I did it first thing in the morning so I wouldn't fall asleep, but I caught that and another error, pointed out to the company, and they went, oops, that's wrong. And they blamed it on the translation, which I get. If you use Google Translator, it happens. I'm joking, but it was just a very, very slight, the wrong word was there. And holy smokes, somebody does read this stuff. And this is pretty recent contract. And then there were a couple of other minor things, but I started reading contracts years ago, an old salt in the business. I think I was kicking the can in the office, and they said, well, didn't you read the contract? No. So you read the damn contract and read it and understand. If you don't understand it, read it again. and especially today, kids, holy smokes, because there's so much crap. I read a stat that if we read all of the disclaimers before we hit I agree in the normal course of things, that it would take 76 hours just in the normal course of stuff that we use every day, that if we had to agree to 3 or 4 pieces of software that we use and so on and so forth, 76 hours to read that stuff. Holy smokes.
I think your example too, Harry, though, highlights how you work in cooperation with the providers. And I think that's the lesson as well. is they didn't balk you. They didn't try to cram it down your throat. That's been my experience as well with several of the providers that I work with in amendments, is as soon as you point it out and you put logic behind it and you say how that is not going to work for the clients to which you serve, I've really had very little pushback. But you did say something yesterday was kind of interesting, is when they say, okay, I'll do it for you, but don't tell anybody else, as though we're working in silos here and not talking to one another. You have had that over the years, obviously.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. We'll treat you differently. Recent case, one of the major providers, an amendment again. If you don't agree to this within 60 days, we'll consider it to be approved, blah, blah, blah. There were a bunch of things in there. The one striking piece that you and I have talked about, Lori, was that it gives the provider the right to contact the plan members and market directly to the plan members with any products or services they feel appropriate. It was a wide open clause. We meet with the client on that topic, as you should do as well when you find these things, and say, does this align? Are you comfortable with? Because they may well say, great. You have to be careful. You can't say, well, I disagree with that and they shouldn't be doing that. So let the client have their say. And in this particular case, it was a manufacturing firm. And the client said, absolutely not. Why would they do that? We pay the bills, quote unquote. Why would they even think to do that without asking us, and so on? So it's an important piece that we read those amendments. And I think it was Jason yesterday said, like, last year was amendment year. No kidding. It was really amendment year. Holy smokes.
I always consider myself the amendment queen from my client's perspective, constantly amending the plan to make sure it suits their needs. One of the things that got me about one of the amendments from last year was it just wasn't based on current employees, but it was former employees as well, who could be contacted by anybody that the provider had thought would suit, like basically saying once they were on the database, it didn't matter whether they were an existing or former employee, then they were eligible to be contacted. And I thought that was a really interesting amendment to try to put through. And I had no problem contacting the lawyer and saying, listen, before I go back to them about this, here's the enrollment form, here's the digital access, here's this amendment. Does this translate? And the answer quickly was no. And with that information, then I proceeded. But I think that can be carried forward, not just in the insurance world, but in any business that we're in.
It comes down to this deeper discussion. Maybe there's two types of advisors out there. There's a salesperson, and then there's a true advocate. And if you're an advocate, you got to do the work. And the work is many times stuff that you're going to ask yourself, well, where's the value here? Huge value here. Imagine catching some of that stuff, and then they tell two friends, and there's your referral network, just on the basis of your advocacy. The other clause that came out last year, and if you didn't see it, go looking for it, and it's a bit troublesome, and we push back on it as well, was in respect of all of the virtual medical bolt-on care. Great idea, fabulous that the carriers would finally be buying into this stuff, the whole telemedicine and all that comes with it. It's not new. It has existed for 20 years, but it's just become more top of mind in most of the deliverables. And so the clause was that if we recommend a bolt-on, I'll use that word, if we recommend an additional service provider, we absolve ourselves of any liability that service provider may have with your client. And I kind of question that. If they've bolted this on, that's part of the offering, and we're not drawing a line in the sand that you're on your own. This is who the fact that they do the marketing and roll it out, there's an inclusion there. So to put the clause in from the lawyer's standpoint I found that to be, no, we're not participating in that. Wow, they didn't like that one, but it's okay. We'll take it out.
Hey, Harry, this was an
Oh.
amendment that they sent out there. So did you have that removed from the client that didn't want that?
I could say
Was
we
the insurance-
challenged a number of the companies. It wasn't just them on that. And the amendment went part and parcel. Okay, we won't put it in.
As long
Well,
as you
you
don't
have-
tell anybody.
This is a special arrangement for you, so consider it.
Scott, what's your experience been with those?
Depends on the size of the group, Lori. So it depends on the carrier. Some carriers you can remove some of those because there are other carriers that have similar kinds of arrangements that you can remove, both for new business and on amendments on renewals. For some of the smaller groups for particular companies, it's basically if you don't like it, then find another carrier somewhere. You know, this is their standard way of doing business for a certain size of client.
I haven't had any of that come back, like that they would say go elsewhere. On the P&C world, Carol, what do you see? Are contracts coming in with these kinds of privacy concerns as well?
Oh yeah, we've been dealing with that forever. Part of our training, like I'm like you, I've been doing this for over 40 years, and the carriers are always trying to change their wordings on what is covered or not covered, especially from a liability standpoint or covering third party. So part of our shtick with all of our employees is you compare this year's policy to last year's policy and you look for those changes. It operates a lot different from, group benefits and stuff, because we deal with like over 40 carriers and they all deal with different things and their policies are all different, obviously. But yeah, the privacy is a very big thing. And that's where right now we're training our staff in cybersecurity and how it affects privacy policies and stuff. It's a big deal.
That Carol is an excellent topic, and it was something we were going to write about and chose not to because that field is such a moving target. We may write about it a little bit later, but I'm always amazed. And Krista, I've seen you speak and I've heard you harp on this, but I'm always amazed at the security in the back rooms of these departments or little group offices or mom and pop shops or whatnot. How are you protecting data? You're throwing a file across from a client to you. Where's that protection? If you don't have it, then go hire somebody to help you get that stuff and make sure that you can sleep at night, because one breach and you're out of business.
Yeah.
These software providers, they all have, the bulk of them host their data on AWS servers, Amazon Web Servers in Canada, generally based on Montreal. And as part of that, Amazon will actually do what's called war testing. It's penetration testing, so they can actually see how vulnerable your systems are. So it's amazing how many of these platforms will not actually do that, invest the time in that, because as you said, Harry, one breach, you're done.
Well, and you can have, you can use these secure systems, but you've got, people working in them, and they can then, download to a flash drive or email personal or health information across, email, right, which is totally unsecure. And so if you don't follow the procedures or the rules for using these systems, you're just opening up, avenues for breach.
Yeah, it's scary, and we have the protection. We have a firm that's taking care of us, and we have, Carol, we have the insurance as well, and I still question when I'm sending a file, two-factor authentication, and maybe on top of that throw something else at it. But it's because the way of the world, for the speed of what we do, we ship stuff around electronically. And, we did a cyber piece for CALU. Now I'll share this with you guys because this is rather interesting. And Chris, you've spoken at CALU, so we did a cyber piece. I got the speaker, etc. And there was only 40 people that attended the session. And of the 40, a few of them had said, yeah, I've been breached, left my laptop in the back of my car and it was stolen. And, that kind of thing. But what was interesting from the individual that we had to come and speak was ask them the question. So how do you become certified as a cyber expert? And he was running his own business. And he says, nobody asks me that question. And I said, well, I'm interested. What? And he said, the final exam, you're given 24 hours to do, and you don't sleep because there's no time to sleep. So you're given an assignment, and that assignment is to determine where the leak was and remedy the leak and plug up the hole in whatever system was there. And I said, so how did you do? And he said, I dozed off with about 15 minutes left. You get 24 hours to do this thing. So you can imagine there's some serious stuff that had to go on in that 24 hours. I can't imagine what he would be doing, but and cyber is you know, it's top of mind for all of us.
Well, I think also it helps to know that there's a reporting requirement, right? If there's a breach of private information, personally identifying or health information is breached, you have an obligation to report it to the government, right? To your privacy commissioner. So like these little mom and pop shops, they wouldn't have a clue. They would not know that. And, you know, I prefer to work with somebody who knows what their responsibilities are.
The other thing you can do, and we actually did this in 2019, and I was glad that we did because, of course, now everything is online via COVID. Awesome. We actually have cyber insurance, and it's through our regular local insurance company that we have, you know, all of our other insurance through, basically so that if there is a breach, like you've done everything you can, the data IT guys that we use are doing everything they can, but it's that like extra level of just in case. And that's really sort of ramped up in the last couple of years. And originally when it first came across my desk, this would have been about 2018, I was attending a lot of cybersecurity things. I thought, we don't really need that. And then I went to an event in the summer of 2019, and I thought, oh, maybe we should. There's different levels you can go through, and it's really not that expensive depending on your client base and your user. You can go all the way up and have, you know, spend a lot of money in coverage, or even just minimal. So it's something to look into too. Once you've done the research with an IT company and they say where your weaknesses are, it's always good to have that fallback plan. Like you wouldn't buy a house without having home insurance. So now that everything is online, during especially the pandemic, even this with the Zoom, right? You kind of want to have that extra security. So
that brings us to time and make a commitment to have a virtual coffee with somebody. It takes a little bit of vulnerability, but once you start doing it, it's actually wonderful. Harry, I can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing and starting the conversation. And I do think it is just the starting point. So thanks so much for coming in. I hope every one of you have a great day. Thanks.